and in the high street as well. And things continued. We were told that it had been going on, this kind of behaviour had been going on for many years, and former councillor Ian Tucker said that it at least had been more than 10 years and action had been taken at various times, but things had still continued. I thought that the public meeting was a point to address the issues properly and to find solutions. It was certainly widely publicised in the press, but sadly it hasn't been the case. I've kept in touch with the traders and they continue to tell me the sort of problems that they have. And I won't go into details, but you probably all are aware of traders who have decided that it's possibly no longer worth their while continuing in the high street, which is very sad. Some people feel that the situation is not that serious. I know the former clerk to this council often said when I stood up and talked about this that it wasn't as bad as I was painting it. And privately, he would ask me, who are you talking to? Because I want to talk to them. Well, of course, I wouldn't give them names, wouldn't give him names. That's, but it does indicate that there was a lack of belief, or at least owning up to the responsibilities that this council faces. I know that the council isn't empowered to do very much, but there are a set of solutions. And in fact, in the tourism strategy, which is the draft, which the Promoting Glastonbury Committee put together, after which it was abolished, committee that is, antisocial behaviour on page 41, it was said, it cannot be stressed enough that in the opinion of some key visitor attractions in the town, the problems seen in the high street leading up to 2017 put in jeopardy the trade and incomes of many businesses. They report being very concerned and say that antisocial behaviour on the scale seen in the summer of 2016 must be dealt with and resolved very quickly, or the town will risk its popularity as a safe destination to visit. It's still a problem, isn't it? It's still getting to be even worse at times. And as I said, there are solutions. I'm quite happy to put those solutions again to another meeting. But I am very disappointed in the way in which perhaps the depth of the problem hasn't been taken as seriously as it should be. I'm also very disappointed in the new councillors who have been elected this year, bar one, who feel or don't seem to tackle the right problem. The right problem, as far as I'm concerned, is the high street and not the travellers on the edge of the town. We don't have any evidence that they're causing the problems in the high street. And it's the high street trade, which Councillor Henderson, I know, very concerned about, so many others, that's really, really important to the reputation of the town. Yes, the fringes, the encampments have their own issues. Those are separate to what I think this meeting should be about. I think that sums up my feelings. I would like to see some proper action, because otherwise, in another 5 years' time, we'll be still talking about this, and we'll have lost a lot of very good trade in the town. Okay, thank you.
Very much, former councillor. So there is still the opportunity for another person to speak if they wish to. Let me know who they are and perhaps the subject. Thank you.
My name's Kevin Gage. I wasn't expecting an open slot like this evening, but I will talk if you don't mind. On both matters, PSPO. First and foremost, I would like everything to work for both sides. There's room here for everyone. There's There's money here for everyone. These people, my people, our people, we're all the same, we're all one, as far as I'm concerned. They have made me feel, I've only been here for 15 and a half months, they've made me feel more welcome than anyone here, in all fairness. They have bigger hearts than anyone here, in all fairness. They have far much more empathy, compassion, awareness, and indeed aptitude if they're given the right opportunities. Are they given the right opportunities? I don't think so. Now's the time that it has to change. All is one, one is all. We forget this, we'll be in trouble. Now, I've been coming to these meetings, you know, you've seen me here every single month, pretty much, for the last, 10 months or so. I listen, I watch, I see, I feel. These guys feel. You guys feel. There is space for everyone here, and it has to be done right. That's that. In terms of the high street, I completely disagree with this man. I've seen vast improvements since I've been here. Vast. Over the last 15 and a half months. There's no two ways about that. I'm concerned at people portraying this image, this falsehood, which simply is not true. Yes, there are still problems. Yes, there are still the individual and the minority that make it difficult for the majority. I concede that. But we all are responsible for this. There's not one person who isn't, especially in Glastonbury, the heart chakra of the planet. Come on. More has to be done. I've been kicking around this for years, you tell me, decades. I don't know, far too long. Stand up for the people. I didn't understand I spoke to Michael about this the day after. The thing that was on the amendment, or whichever it was, to the thing the other day, I didn't understand it. It was too wordy for me. So I didn't know which way. I didn't know which side was which. I was doing my best, but it was just incomprehensible to me. Things have to be clear. Things have to be concise. And they have to be really, really, really transparent. If not, things will come back and haunt us, you, everyone. Now is the time. Now is the time that we bring it all together. These guys, us guys, you guys, we're all as important. I understand the people's woes when, you know, they're having the houses vandalized, or they're having people shout and scream outside their places, drunk and drugged up, or whatever else. I get that. I empathize with both parties. But we are all in this together. And we have to find a solution together that works for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So we now move.
Please, I might have a resolution to the alcohol and drug problem.
Would you be happy to give us your name?
Yes, Colette Morley.
Colette Morley.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colette.
Because obviously the people that are on drugs and alcohol have been through some tough times and probably come from a abusive background, so they're quite disturbed. So what we need to do is help them. Yeah, we need to help them with psychological help and addiction therapy. And I myself am an ex-addict. I've also been on the streets and I've been a nuisance, yeah, but I'm now clean and peaceful, yeah. And the way I did it was by receiving help. Yeah, and one thing that I thought recently would be really good in Glastonbury would be to make space for a 12-step program, because it works, yeah, to get people on it. That helped me, and it's helped a lot of people all over the planet to get clean. There's many other ways, but for addicts, it's a start, yeah, and to have regular meetings, constant meetings where addicts and alcoholics, whatever, can come together and communicate together and get help with their addictions instead of us like punishing and blaming. They are human beings like all of us that have the right to live and be here. They just disturbed psychologically and they don't know how to cope, so they take on addiction to cope with their disturbances from the past. They just need help. And with the travellers, there's two sides to this. Again, it's that those that are addicts and create a nuisance, they need help, yeah? And there's people like me and many others which are just really cool and peaceful. We want to be natural. We don't want anything to do with this artificial reality, but we're good, yeah? And we obviously we probably hear this a lot, we want land, yeah? Give us land. And the other guys, they need help. 12 steps is a great idea. It's a great idea. Addiction support, free psychological help, you know. There's a lot of ways to help addiction, and this is what these people need. They need help, and we need to help them instead of pointing the finger, because, you know, we are all the same, you know, if you take the mind out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Colette. So we now are moving to the formal business of the meeting. Before we get there, perhaps, Colette, would you be happy to light our unity candle for us? It's the lighters here and the candle just there. So at the beginning of each of our meetings, we light this candle as a sign of unity, that we as a council do understand that we are all one. And once we have lit the candle, I would ask you all to stand with me to observe the silent minute. And of course, we have just been through remembrance of Armistice and Remembrance Sunday. And of course, today is also the day which signifies the end of Glastonbury Abbey and the deaths of Richard Whiting, John Thorne and Roger James. So a particularly pertinent day to remember. So I'd ask you to stand with me once the candle is lit to observe the silent minute for all those that we wish to remember. Thank you.
Safety.
Thank you, Colette. We will remember them.
We'll remember that.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So this is an extraordinary meeting of the council. There is one agenda item, but before we reach it, I would like to ask the clerk if we've received any apologies for tonight's meeting.
I've not received any apologies for absence for this evening's meeting, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillors, we are aware of the declarations of interest that you've signed on your interest forms, but in relation to tonight's meeting and the subject matter, are there any declarations of interest? Thank you, councillors. If during the debate and the presentation you realise that there is a conflict of interest, please do raise it as a point of order. So I would just check formally with the clerk that we don't need to receive the minutes of the previous meeting of the council.
The minutes of the previous meeting weren't ready, Your Worship, and no.
Thank you very much. So we will observe the fact that standing orders would say that that was correct, but that the minutes for tonight's meeting is that the minutes were not ready. We finally move on to item 3, to receive a presentation from representatives of Avon and Somerset Police on the subject of antisocial behaviour in Glastonbury, and to hold a discussion about the force's future plans on this topic. I would like to hand over to the representatives of the police, and thank you very much for being here. I understand you'll be using the projector. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, aldermen, members of the Glastonbury community. You'll forgive me, I'll be reading a few notes as we go, but I'll try and maintain eye contact as best I can. I'm Matthew Reid, and I'm the relatively newly appointed inspector for the Mendip Neighbourhood Policing Team, having been posted in August. It's my strong belief that our communities are served best when all partners and agencies work together. And that's why I'm so grateful for your invitation to come and present to you this evening. The Mendips is an area I know and love, so I feel very lucky to have been posted here. Next summer will see my 20th year in the police. Avon Somerset is my second force. I've worked in a variety of roles, including response policing, roads policing, collision investigation, CID, and now here, neighbourhoods in the Mendips. And I hope that my experience will add value to the policing and the quality of the policing in the area. I'm joined this evening by your neighbourhood policing sergeant for Glastonbury, Simon Lancy, and the policing commander for Somerset, Superintendent Turner. So thank you both for being here as well. I'm also grateful to the town clerk for inviting members of representatives from Mendip Council at my request. If I may, I wanted to start this evening by updating you with where Avon and Somerset is a force. This will give some context to the parameters in which we work locally in serving our communities, and then I'll move on to the issue at hand, which is Glastonbury. And certainly the levels of street crime and antisocial behaviour, which is of concern to many. Some of you will know the Policing Crime Commissioner, Mark Shelford, of course, and I understand that arrangements have been made for him to come and meet with the Town Council later next month. And I am grateful for the scrutiny that his office brings. The office of the PCC is entirely independent of the constabulary. PCC sets the strategy and the direction for constabulary, publishing this in the Police and Crime Plan, which runs for his term in office. He holds the Chief Constable to account to deliver the objectives of that plan, and here you can see the 4 overarching areas included in it. I'll move on to the workings of your local neighbourhood policing team a little later. You will see that these priorities are front and centre of what we do at the local level. And at the end, Sergeant Lancy, Superintendent Turner, and I will be happy to hear your comments and answer any questions that you may have. The Chief Constable has operational control of the force, and as already mentioned, is responsible for delivering the objectives of the Police and Crime Plan. The police service is experiencing a difficult time of austerity measures from 2010 saw a significant reduction in police budgets and the resultant reduction in police officer and police staff numbers. We are now rebuilding, but this in itself brings challenges. More recently, we have also seen the abhorrent behaviour of officers elsewhere in the country, and this has brought into question the model of policing by consent, which is the very basis on which we were founded. The confidence in the police service has been significantly undermined. In response to these challenges, the Chief Constable has set out a very clear 6-point plan to deliver improved performance, and these are being worked on simultaneously and at pace across the organisation. First, you can see here is achieving the uplift. We are on course to recruit the government's target of 453 new police officers. Not all forces will achieve this. We'll also be recruiting approximately 200 extra members of police staff who also fulfil critical roles in delivering a variety of services to the public. We'll rebuild investigations, also commonly known as CID. There is a significant shortfall in qualified detectives nationally, and we in Avon and Somerset unfortunately are no different. This is being remedied by various means and is an improving picture. As a rapidly expanding organisation, we have to manage our growing pains. For example, because of the shortfall in detectives, other departments such as response and neighbourhoods are having to deal with some of the cases that would ideally be being dealt with by CID. This is a growing pain, but it's temporary. Filling an additional 453 additional police officers actually means recruiting 1,300 new officers in just 3 years. That is unprecedented. The number is simply because people leaving through retirement and so on, so we have to uplift the total number of posts in recruitment. So another growing pain is that resultantly we will see a large percentage of relatively inexperienced officers. What I am convinced about, however, is of the plans in place to deal with these challenges. Will lead cultural change, whereas I honestly believe that culturally Avon and Somerset is in a much better place than some other forces. We would have our head in the sands if we did not recognise and acknowledge the problem of damaged public confidence. On a force level, we're leading on initiatives such as Race Matters. This is not who we are, relating to misogynistic behaviour and cultural intelligence training for all people across the organisation. As your local inspector, I give you my absolute assurance that I will do all I can to root out toxic behaviours and subcultures in whichever dark corners they lie. We need to develop our leaders. In my mind, this links to the previous 2 points. With a young workforce, we will see younger leaders. This, along with the need to drive cultural change, means we must invest in them. An example of this is the industry-leading Leadership Academy, which trains and develops leaders at all levels, and this is something I've benefited from. And finally, creating capacity. Avon and Somerset leads the country in our technological ability using AI, robotics and data. We clearly understand where our demand lies, and this allows us to make the best use of our resources. We are relentlessly seeking ways to improve our efficiency and our processes in order to free up time for officers. To summarise, all of these measures will bring improvements to all of the communities in Avon and Somerset, including Glastonbury and the wider Mendip area. Never before in my 20 years have I seen such a detailed and well thought through plan from the top, and all of these are being embedded at all levels through the organisation. Moving on to a local context then, the Mendip area, including Glastonbury, is served by various strands of the organisation. Response policing is based centrally in Shepton Mallet. It's made up of 5 teams which rotate around the clock to cover 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The teams are made up of a sergeant and approximately 8 constables, and 1 inspector aligns with each team, but also covers South Somerset, Yeovil and Chard, etc. As the name suggests, the response director is responsible for responding to emergency 909 calls and calls that require attendance within an hour, what we would call a priority call. One of our growing pains in this area is the struggle to maintain sufficient numbers on response teams, while so many are in training and being recruited. Then we have my team, the neighbourhood policing team, split into 2 halves, the east covering Froome and Shepton Mallet, and the west covering Wells Street, and obviously here in Glastonbury. And I'll delve into the team structure and responsibilities in just a moment. And finally, from Bridgewater, the area is supported by CID, Operation Remedy, which deals with serious drug matters, traffic, firearms, operational support, mounted section, you may have seen in the High Street recently, and the a simple map of the wards in the area, Sheds and Mallet response base centrally, and then the surrounding neighbourhood bases. So the neighbourhood team is led by Simon Nancy and Hannah Hyde in the west, and Dan Jeffries and Stephen Redding in the east. And as you can see, the team is broken down into specific areas, which means each has a dedicated team. Hopefully recognise some of the names from the Glastonbury team, and I'm pleased to tell you that we're currently fully staffed. In neighbourhood policing, our work is defined in 6 areas. Problem solving, first of all. We work on complex, multifaceted problems which impact on quality of life with a problem-solving framework. We work with partners to put measures in place to solve these problems. The issues facing us in Glastonbury at the moment are a very good example of this. We investigate crime, mostly offences which impact on a specific community or neighbourhood. In support of our response colleagues, we respond to emergency and priority calls for assistance from the public. In order to build relationships, we work in partnership and improve public confidence. We engage with the public through beat surgeries, for example, with voluntary or community groups such as schools and community speed watches, and with statutory partners such as local authorities and parish and town councils. Through our work, we come across vulnerable people, be they children being exploited, domestic abuse victims, people who may be homeless, or those targeted due to a protected characteristic. We work with other partners and agencies to ensure such people are supported to a safe position. And finally, in neighbourhoods, we help manage offenders who live in the community. These are sex offenders, people recently released from prison, or violence offenders, and we help to manage the risk posed by and to them. This is roughly where our time is split at the moment. I mentioned earlier about our growing pains. This is representative of that. Whilst our response directorate is recruiting new officers and some of us from lack of experience, we on neighbourhoods are having to respond to and investigate incidents more than we would like to. This squeezes our ability to cover other important areas of our work, but it is an improving picture. And as we move through the 6 stepping stones which I've already highlighted, this is where we would hope to be. A more even spread, but with a greater focus on problem solving, community engagement. So that's a whistle-stop tour of where we are as a force now. And in summary, although we still have significant challenges, I'm confident that the plans are in place, and I believe that we're moving to a better and brighter place. So to move to Glastonbury, and the reason that we're all here. Excuse me. I come with this with a fresh pair of eyes. I spent the last few months trying to understand the complexities of this very unique and special place. There are undoubtedly problems, but what I'm buoyed by is the knowledge, enthusiasm, dedication of your local neighbourhood policing team in dealing with them. They are an extraordinary bunch, and are already making headway. When I arrived in post, one of the first things that landed on my desk was a public complaint through the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. And that simply said, the police do nothing about the problems in Glastonbury. This was a very stark statement to read, but what it prompted me to do was to look at the data and information to begin to build a picture, and I'm afraid to say that it wasn't pretty. I will go on to the data in a moment, but I will start on the public feedback that I've heard and my own observations. I heard and saw persistent I became aware of drug dealing and drug taking in public in and around the town centre. I heard of regular loud music, shouting and arguments in the street, often late into the night, by those engaged in alcohol and drug consumption in the street. I heard of frustrations over unlicensed street traders selling the same wares as the fixed businesses and licensed market traders in the town. I heard of annoyance and witnessed firsthand unregulated busking, disturbing the peace, sometimes late into the night. I became aware of the very easy and unchallenged access to alcohol in the town. And some of the feedback I heard was that the regular availability of free food exacerbated the problem by encouraging more people to come to the town. Several business owners described to me how they had been directly affected by the situation. And I heard from residents who live in and around the high street who were being disturbed on an almost daily basis in one way or another. I would say that unanimously the opinion of that side of the community was of serious concern and frustration. I mentioned at the beginning that as a force we have an incredible ability to analyse our data, and so I compared the crime and antisocial behaviour figures for Glastonbury for 2 rolling 12-month periods. I'll show you the data here for October 2021 to October 2022 in comparison to the previous year. And more specifically, I looked at the data for a small area of the town centre, the High Street, Market Cross, Magdalen Street, and a radius of about 50 metres, an incredibly small area. And in this year, compared to the previous 12 months, antisocial behaviour incidents had risen by almost a fifth. Antisocial behaviour involving groups of people had jumped by almost 40%. Total recorded crime up by 13%. Possession of weapons up by a third. Public order offences up by almost a quarter. Theft up 17.5%. Violence against the person down 7%, although the number of incidents still remaining high. And drug offences increased by 75%. So violence against the person, assaults, public order offences and theft account for the largest proportion of crime. Antisocial behaviour are incidents which are not classified as a crime per se, but are still recorded nonetheless. From my community, the feedback I heard from some parts of the community, my view is that antisocial behaviour does go underreported, because unfortunately I think we've got to a stage where people have had what's the point in reporting it type attitude, which is a real warning sign for me. On drugs, I don't think this is an accurate portrayal of the problem. Incidents are only recorded when officers find someone in possession of a drug, and this low number may indicate a historic lack of enforcement. Sadly, drugs will always be present in society. Glastonbury is no different. Police's priority will always be to target those involved in the organised business of supplying drugs, rather than the users who are victims of the trade. That said, possession of drugs is illegal, and when we see drugs being used, especially in public, we will take action. But doing so is not just about prosecution. Users are referred to support services wherever possible. And only in the last few weeks, the information we've received through our work is that there is an increasing drug trade in the town. We've come across and are aware of several young people being exploited to work in the drugs trade. And where there is a drugs market, drug dealers will come, young people will be exploited, and harm will be done to our communities. And sadly, it's my opinion that there is a large market for drugs in this town. In terms of the street crime and antisocial behaviour that I've described, I can go through some information on who's responsible and where it's occurring. I want to add a definite caveat here. We will not target any individual or group of people because of their background or lifestyle choice. Our response will be based only on information and evidence. We will follow where that takes us. What we see is a core group of street drinkers, or benchers as some of them refer to themselves as, referring to the benchers outside of St John's Church. I think that might be indicative of the problem, potentially, that people feel so ingrained in that way of life that they refer to themselves as a link to a physical feature within the town. Very few, if any of them, are from Glastonbury originally. Very few identify as homeless or live on the street, or have some form of accommodation locally. I mentioned earlier about our ability to analyse data. I'm confident we have an accurate picture of the people involved. And the group is transient in nature. People come and go permanently or temporarily, but the number stays relatively stable day to day, week on week, but a slow upward trajectory is noted. This is an interesting point though. For example, we recently became of a male who was from Liverpool. He was released from prison in Liverpool, had no prior links to Glastonbury, but he appeared in the town. I'm aware of another male who has a property in Bournemouth but chooses to live in Glastonbury in temporary accommodation. And just the other day, I personally dealt with a lad from Devon who was detained under the Mental Health Act. It was a very sad and difficult case. But again, he had no prior links to Glastonbury, but he arrived and started drinking on the benches in the high street. Why? And where is it happening? St John's Churchyard, High Street in the vicinity of the church, the benches in front of the church, the alleyways adjacent to the church, and 90% of the matters that I've talked about are within a 300 metre radius of that location. And the map across as well. The town centre is a significant outlier in terms of the level of street crime and antisocial behaviour when compared to other similarly sized towns. In fact, one has to look at areas of central Bristol, Weston-super-Mare for equitable comparison. And in a historical policing context, Glastonbury has experienced similar problems as referenced earlier. Where before my time, other problem-solving plans were utilised by the police to varying levels of success. But this has left me pondering, why does the town have such a persistent and cyclical problem with street crime and antisocial behaviour? And I'll come on to that a little bit more later. That all seems rather bleak, and I'm very aware of that, but I won't hide the figures or mince my words when it comes to them. But importantly, I want to move on to how my team and I are responding at the moment, and I hope you will feel reassured by that. There's some officers from the Mountain section a couple of weeks ago, James and Amy from my town, so from my team in the town, and my team are on duty this evening out on the beat as we speak. When the increase in street crime and antisocial behaviour came to my attention, we instigated a problem-solving plan. I'll refer to it as PSP because in the police we love an acronym. A PSP is a process by which we analyse information to define a problem. We then use that evidence to make a plan with defined actions and clear objectives. In the case of Glastonbury, this has been running for approximately 6 weeks now. We've defined the actions into short and medium-term measures. You've seen an increased police presence, particularly on late shifts. We've utilised other neighbourhood teams to come from their areas to cover afternoons and evenings when the Glastonbury team is not on duty. We've been supported by bids for force-wide resources such as mounted section and officers from operational support teams. And again, this just increases our presence and capability across 7 days. Enhance engagement with residents and businesses. We've been more engaged, listening to concerns and feedback. My barometer of public confidence shows an improving picture. And we've delivered ASB diaries for local shops and residents to record incidents and report back to us. With easy access to alcohol in the town, with the licensing officer, we've taken enforcement action against one local premise with an off licence due to evidence licensing breaches. And this will be closely monitored, and I will be shortly writing to all licence holders in the town to offer support and provide information on how to achieve the necessary standards. Direct engagement with the street drinking community. Whilst we've been more robust in enforcing ASB and criminal offences, we always seek to build relationships and refer to support agencies wherever possible. Helping people to understand the effects of their behaviour is key. Enforcement of the antisocial behaviour legislation and the public space protection order. PSP I refer to as the one relating specifically to street drinking and intoxicating substances in the streets. Enforcement of antisocial behaviour is dealt with as a tiered approach. We start with 3 levels of warning letters. If the behaviour continues, we invoke community protection warning. If this is breached, we invoke a community protection notice, and where conditions relating to acceptable behaviour are imposed. And if the behaviour should persist, we can apply for a full criminal behaviour order, breaching which can bring up to a 5-year custodial sentence. Anyone getting to that stage will be in no doubt of the impact that their behaviour has had before, because we will use a soft tiered approach to inform, help and support them before we get to that stage. And we are seeking our first CBO in the town as we speak. and several community protection warnings and notices are being evidenced, and we have delivered a large number of antisocial behaviour warning letters. We're also working with Mendip District Council to jointly enforce the street drink PSPO, which deals with both street drinking and the taking of other intoxicating substances. My team are more closely monitoring the core group of perpetrators. If they come to notice, we look to deal with them positively for any identified offences. And we have 2 new members of staff as well, who you saw at the beginning, PCSO Higgs and PC Higgins. I have to point out that some of the short-term measures are not sustainable for long periods. For example, my team is spending approximately 80% of its time working in that very small area of the town centre. In fact, the High Street is probably the most patrolled road in the force over the last few weeks. But they are the team for the whole of Glastonbury and the wider rural areas, so have wider responsibilities. They also have to bid for force-wide resources, competing for demands in other areas. And we are coming to the end of the intense short-term measures, so I have to consider how we continue in the medium term. And in the medium term, visibility and engagement and enforcement by the neighbourhood team will continue, albeit at a less intense level. We'll increase and decrease our presence in the town centre in response to prevailing circumstances. Use of force-wide resources when required. Again, these will be present for the next few weeks and we can bid for them again as and when needed. Licensing engagement, information and enforcement will continue. ASB interventions will continue, and the hope is that the intense period of interventions in the short term will improve the behaviour in the longer term. Making the police post on Magdalen Street accessible to all police is under lock and key when my team aren't on duty, and that's about to change, so I'm encouraging other departments and officers to come when my team are not in. We're working with Mendip District Council to ensure consistent enforcement of the PSPO, and my team and I meet with them, the representatives of Mendip, regularly to discuss. The Designing Out Crime Advisor has visited the town, has made some suggestions to change the physical environment in the town, and I hope to have the opportunity to share that with the Town Council in due course. We're also working closely with St John's Church. We have an excellent relationship with the vicar and the volunteers. The church will also be visited out by the Designing Out Crime Advisor, and the church is considering banning notices and signage. We're developing drug intelligence for enforcement action. Sadly, my feeling is the situation is developing quickly and will require us to alter course in order to deal with it. But we are ready and willing to do so. And off the back of that, we are already working with agencies to support exploited young people, and will continue to do that as a priority. So that's our short and medium term picture. We're probably transitioning from the short to the medium as we speak. So I'll move on to the long term picture, if I may. My work in the town has so far led me to ask myself 3 questions. Why the cyclical nature of the problem? What is it about Glastonbury that attracts a disproportionate number of people involved in street crime and antisocial behaviour? And how do we address the underlying causes? The question I'd like to ask you is how you would describe Glastonbury in, say, 3 words, or rather, how would you like Glastonbury to be described? And I gave that question a lot of thought, and I think my answer was diverse, spiritual, fun. I think we'd all identify with that. The town is infamous. Its unique and eclectic culture is what makes it recognisable and attractive to all. It attracts visitors and tourists, which drives the economy. It is a wonderful place. How I am worried that this may be the developing and increasing image of what is happening in the town. So the question I think we need to consider together are those I posed a few moments ago. Why do we see the cyclical nature of crime and antisocial behaviour? Why is the town so attractive to people who choose to perpetrate that behaviour? And how do we address the underlying causes? As a relative newcomer to the town, I come with a fresh pair of eyes. I've observed and I've listened. I've listened this evening. Police have a large part to play in dealing with the issues that's been described, and I give you my assurance that the team and I are laser focused on them, as I hope I've highlighted. However, what we cannot address alone are some of the underlying causes. I respectfully suggest that this is something we all need to consider and work together to resolve. And so I'll now move on to my observation on some of the issues which I think contribute to the problem. Some of them are difficult and some of them are divisive. I do so without judgment, and in some cases I will have caveats. As a police officer, I have to be careful not to stray into giving political opinion, so I'm not aiming to instruct or demand any particular course of action. However, I do think these are issues that need to be discussed and considered by the town as a whole, and at the end I'll make a suggestion in a way in which I think that may be achieved. Glastonbury has well over 100 caravans or similar used as dwellings. The caveat I will add here is that there are a number of reasons why people choose to live in this way. The vast majority of the travelling community are law-abiding, are working, and cause absolutely no issues. Senior representatives of the police, as well as members of my team, recently met with representatives of the travelling community to discuss this way of life in a policing context. It was a constructive meeting. It was voiced that the group may set up an advisory group to assist us in our understanding of their way of life, and we very, very much welcome that. I want to make it very clear again that we do not target anyone because they happen to choose a different or an alternative way of life. We only target people if they're involved in antisocial behaviour or criminality. However, the feedback I've heard is that some feel the number of this type of dwelling is disproportionate to the size of the town. And what cannot be disputed is that the number is far in excess of any comparable sized town, possibly anywhere. The scale of this unregulated and mainly free accommodation may partly explain why we see people from elsewhere in the country migrating to the town. I mentioned at the beginning that the majority of people causing issues in the towns do not consider themselves homeless, and indeed we have very few people, if any, living on the street. Many of the people causing these issues are accommodated in this way. Very few live in the town, but they've chosen to come here. I also mentioned earlier, sorry, technical glitch, no, bear with me, apologies. It was all going so smoothly. There we go, thank you. I also mentioned earlier about unrelated busking and street trading. My observation is that a good number of people who busk or trade in goods on the street do so regularly, but for very short periods of time, in order to earn a few pounds to allow them to buy drink or drugs. I say this advisedly because in my experience, those who suffer with addiction will prioritise the purchase of those things over food or medicine, for example, because for them that is their acute need. And so the cycle continues. Glastonbury, of course, has its artisan market, but are those street traders and fixed businesses in the town being undermined by people who trade without a licence, who sell very similar goods? This is some of the feedback I've heard. And in relation to busking, many of us will know about Covent Garden, Bath, and further afield, La Rambla in Barcelona, for being renowned for the quality of their street entertainers. Much to the amusement of my kids, this was me in Barcelona earlier in this year. I'm the one on the right. Thank you. There we go. I'm the one on the right. And these performers are infamous in La Rochelle on the French Atlantic coast. They have their own YouTube channel and are always surrounded by crowds. Both are premier tourist destinations, which are enriched by the quality of their street entertainment. Is this what we see in Glastonbury now? The feedback I've heard suggests not. And from my own observations, I have to say that I share this view. I'm aware of the code of practice for street performers in the town, but my view is unfortunately that it is not being adhered to, partly because it is not enforceable. Would licensing street performers and street traders, for example, stifle individuality and creativity, or would it promote these things, whilst also ensuring quality? Would it help to break the cycle of a few fat pounds being earned for the purchase of drink or drugs? Would it encourage visitors and tourists to the town? I suggest it would. Along with the provision of accommodation, as already mentioned, is the permissive culture around low-quality busking and street trading part of the attraction of the town to some who are also involved in street crime and antisocial behaviour. This next bit by saying that I truly believe that as a society we all have a responsibility for supporting those in need, One of my family's traditions is to match our Christmas supermarket shop each year with donations to our local food bank. I want my children to know and understand how lucky we are and how important it is to help those who are not as fortunate. We are in hard times and things are about to get harder for many, so support services are more important now than ever. In Glastonbury, we see free meals are available several times a week from various sources. The food bank on Magdalen Street not only feeds people in need, it also helps to minimise waste. In relation to food provision, Glastonbury has some of the best support I've seen. PCSO Paul Linsell and I were kindly invited to join the community lunch at St Bartholomew's Church a few weeks ago. It was well attended and it was warming to see the effort and care put into it by the volunteers. It had a real community feel. And we were joined by a number of people with whom we discussed various local issues. You saw before that one of our pillars of neighbourhood policing is engagement. This was one of the most effective pieces of police engagement I've been involved in. And this was with a community that may otherwise have been hard to reach for us. But there is the question of the chicken and the egg. Food is being provided in such quantity because there is a large number of people who need it. But does this add to the attraction to come to Glastonbury on top of the accommodation and the ease of earning money already discussed? This is the feeling of some in the town. St John's Church is considering putting on an evening meal once a week for families from the school. The vicar is worried as to how he will differentiate between families and others, and I think he might have a point. I'm worried that this might exacerbate the issue. It is not my place to pass judgment on this. It is a very, very difficult question. As I've said, my instinct is always to help people in need. But if I'm really honest with you, I think that there are a good number of people in the town who take advantage of the town's welcome, hospitality and support. They will take what they need, but they go on to commit crime and antisocial behaviour. And from a policing perspective, this also adds a challenging nuance. When we come to invoke powers to exclude the most harmful perpetrators from the town centre, it's difficult to do so. They are legitimately able to confirm that they need to be in the town to access support services. In summary, what I've come to learn is that the issues facing the town are complex. However, if they are not tackled, I fear that the persistent nature of street crime and antisocial behaviour will continue. The underlying causes are also complex, and this evening I've spoken about just a few of them. My view is that a permissive culture has developed in Glastonbury, whereby a number of individuals feel that anything goes. I believe that as a town, we need to work together to decide what kind of place we want Glastonbury to be, to decide what is acceptable and what is not, to encourage diversity, spirituality and fun, but to reject the behaviour of some who choose to ignore the rights, peace and freedoms of the many. There are no easy answers and no single person or agency can deal with this alone. And the history of the problem evidences that we cannot police our way out of it. What I'm certain of, though, is that if we come together, we can capitalise on our collective creativity, experience, energy and talent to begin to understand and tackle these issues. This evening, therefore, I would like to make a proposal, the formation of a working group for Glastonbury, one that is representative of all of our communities, but is committed to making it a better place for all to live, to work and visit. This may include the police, town council, the Mendip or the new unitary authority, religious groups, businesses, members of the travelling community. I'd hope we do so in the hope. The last slide was the best. Bear with me. Apologies. There we are. But to bring together a group such as that, to make those decisions, to discuss these difficult issues, to tackle some of the underlying causes of the issues we see, so that we can work together for a brighter, more peaceful future for everyone in the town. Thanks very much. Thank you. And Your Worship, my colleagues and I would welcome any comments or questions that you or the community may have.
Thank you very much. So I know you say the councillors and the community, so I am happy to take questions from members of the community too, as is possible through standing orders. If you do have a question, please do put your hand up. The way that we do this is put your hand up if you wish to speak, and I shall make a list of all those with their hands up and we just go through. Normally in this council, you speak once to any item, so and it's 3 minutes even for councillors, although if you watch us regularly, you'll realise that not every councillor obeys that order. Do come to the front if you wish to speak when you're called to speak, as there's a microphone there, and people, I know that there are quite a few people probably watching this evening, will be able to hear what you're saying. But first of all, I would like to ask, and the same goes for County Councillor, of course, and anyone else who is in the room who I haven't included in public in town councillors, district councillors also. So first of all, I would like to ask whether any of the town councillors have any questions for the inspector. Yes, councillor.
I was just wondering, I mean, there are rumours that quite a lot of the caravans which are dwelt in on the various roads around here are actually owned by a single individual and rented out. And I wondered if you were going to take any action on anything like that.
I've heard the same rumours. How true they are, I couldn't comment on it. There's very little in the way of that being reported directly to us. If anyone has any information in relation to offences that may be committed in that way, I'll be happy to take it. It may be for the police, it may be the local authority, but by all means.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much a question as an observation. I think we all welcome the presentation tonight. I think you've hit the nail on the head on many occasions there. And I think a lot of people who come to the council in this present time maybe look at us or Mendip or the county council as some kind of sort of tyrannical organisation. But as has been said several times, this has been on the agenda at least for the 10 years I've been a councillor, and probably prior to that. And I think the reason that the problem hasn't been solved or has maybe got worse is because this council has been so tolerant. You know, not heavy-handed, council that sort of runs people out of town on a rail or whatever like that. We have tried to accommodate and we have bumped along together for many, many years. You know, I know lots of people that live down on the site there. It's in my ward. I go down there. I haven't been down there recently, but I used to go down there a lot before it was more legitimised. And I think, as the inspector pointed out, I think to a certain extent we have been taken advantage of because of our tolerance. You know, we're here to help people. We're here to give food to people that need it. You know, we're here to accept those people who don't maybe want to fit into a more stringent society, but that attracts an element that are here to get what they can. And I think that small minority is tarring the majority. And I think that's where animosities rise. You know, we need to sort of work together. I think the idea of a council, made up of lots of different units is a great idea. We've tried it before. Councillor London, myself, our ex-councillor London, myself used to meet with the police, and we've tried it, and that is definitely the way forward. You need to hear everybody's views. We need to achieve the best for everybody that needs it, but at the same time, we don't need to be taken the Michael out of. And I think we'd all agree with that. We don't want to be taken advantage of, but we want to help each other. So I'd welcome that tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Oakton.
Thank you for that presentation, which was very good and probably one of the best I've heard. One of the problems that I've encountered in the 5 years that I've worked in lived in Glastonbury is the fact that the policing has not been as robust as we would have liked it to be. And that is a comment I think anybody that has travelled up and down the high street will tell you. The other thing I have to say is that we have these meetings on many, many occasions, and the one word that I never hear is residents. I hear a great deal about travelling community. I hear a great deal about the non-bricks and mortar community, but I rarely hear about the residents. And the residents do have a say, and they should be involved in everything that we do, because they actually pay our wages through their their council tax. And in point of fact, their council tax enables the people to come to Glastonbury and to be cared for. And that shouldn't be forgotten. We do have to work together, of course we do. We'll never achieve anything if we don't. But at the end of the day, each side must respect the other, because without respect, nothing will happen. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I would just like to clarify for anybody watching on YouTube that the council used a figure of speech when she said pay our wages. Councillors, of course, do not receive any income at all for being in this role, even the mayor. Councillor Cottle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I've got a little bit. First of all, I will point out that district councillors and county councillors receive allowances. Town councillors don't.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's just to settle that one. Also, I'm probably the person with the longest memory of this town. Maybe Lindsay might be close, but when I was thinking, I know that 50 years ago, now this is just to put something in context that Councillor Henderson mentioned, 50 years ago, and it was 50, there was travelling people on the side of the road around the park corner area, and that was and what happened there was that human waste was put there by the authorities of that time, and it was a white block, and it was all put there along there, and that was 50 years ago. Different times. We live in different times now, and that was put along the side of the road there. So I remember that, and they were very peaceful people, the people who lived there at that time. Then we move on a bit. We come to 35 years ago, and I know it's 35 years ago because I know how old I am. And at that time, I had a flat in the high street, and there were no railings around the church, and it was bedlam. I have to be honest. There was sometimes there I had to sell. Because it was absolute bedlam all of the time. People drunk everywhere, constant. So that was just to put a little bit of context on what Steve was saying. And next, now we fast forward to today's issues. Now, I don't think it's fair to blame for anybody to blame the people in the caravans for what the issues we have in the high street. A lot of the people who there, as you rightly pointed out in your excellent presentation, are people who actually live locally in bricks and mortar, if you like to call it. So I think we need to separate the two, really, to be able to move forward. And I think that has to separate in people's minds as well, because there is this thing. Because we have a certain amount of people who tend to just drink, as we call them, benchers or whatever they like to call themselves. And we did have a certain criminal element who used to hang out there, who I haven't seen there recently, I must admit. So yeah, it has improved over the years. It might not seem it to people who haven't been here for a very long time, but it has. And I think that your idea about a working party, like a working group, is excellent. I would really want to be a member of that. Okay, so I'll leave it there from me for now. But I'm happy, so I'll leave it to anybody else to speak.
Councillor Manning.
Thank you, Matthew, for that presentation. It's really interesting. It was also quite reassuring to hear that Glastonbury has got problems, because so often I felt the message we were getting was that, well, Glastonbury's just like any other town. The levels are really low, but we people who live here know that Glastonbury has had its problems. I would say as well, though, that there's figures you put up about the rise in the last 12 months. Of course, for the year 2021, we were in COVID, so I think the figures were low. So although I'm not, I'm obviously sorry to see that the figures up, the amounts are high, I think the percentages are probably not quite a fair.
I think you're right, Councillor. I think the figures are probably the ones to look at. We've done 1,500 offences in that very small area in a year is high, but I acknowledge the point of the rise.
It's really nice to see that you've got a 3-year plan. So basically, over the next 2 or 3 years, we can actually, every year we can see how we're getting on. One thing I noticed though was that you said that you were going to be doing to help with young vulnerable adults. Most of the people I know there are some young adults who hang around the benches, but the ones who are the sort of more hardened benchers, I wouldn't use the word young to describe them. And a lot of them have got problems. It would be nice if there was some support going their way. But I think it's really important to include other agencies to resolve these problems.
Thank you. And absolutely, as I mentioned, I did highlight some of the youngsters particularly vulnerable because of their age, 14, 15, 16 years old, getting involved in drugs. But equally, adults have vulnerabilities, and we do see the help and support services whenever we can.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for your presentation. Those of you who know me will know that I'm a councillor for St Ben's Ward. I walk the High Street every day, Silver Street, Magdalen Street. I sit on the benches, so I'm a bencher, but I don't drink or take drugs. But I meet a lot of people, sit in the churchyard, learn. I also walk up Beckery a lot, up to Red Brick, talk to the people. And what Colette said about people needing help, that's been said to me 3 times just in the last 2 or 3 days. So that certainly feels to be the sort of way to go. I would also really like to be part of a sort of multi-faceted group. I know most of the local police as well. And so for me, most of the time, we have a good job. And I certainly agree with what you said, like we walk, we talk, and we sort of understand what's happening. And then finally, I guess, for like Glastonbury, it is a spiritual attraction. Pilgrims have been coming for centuries for all sorts of different reasons, and so it's not like other places. So as you acknowledge, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask that any councillors who haven't spoken yet, town councillors, whether they wish to before I move to a wider group. Thank you. I would, sorry, Councillor Smythe, I do apologise.
That's quite all right. Thank you for your presentation. With all due respect, it's very evident that you're new to the town. I arrived here in 1985, lived in the caravan. I've been a problem ever since.
I don't believe it.
I do my best. But the reason I came, frankly, was because of the festival. Now that is a big attraction for a lot of people, obviously. And a lot of people here stay because of it. The name Glastonbury is used. It's not a Glastonbury Festival, it's a Pilgrim Festival. It'd be nice if there'd be some recognition from the festival organisers of the problem here at Glastonbury. It hasn't been created by the festival, but it's certainly one of the complex factors. Another complex factor has been the recent increase in vandalism, has been the COVID lockdown, and also the lack of festivals, because normally people who come to Glastonbury Festival, or rather work at Glastonbury Festival, they would move around on the festival circuit, or they'll find seasonal labour on the land, which again, that's been eradicated somewhat over the last 10 or 15 years. Economic pressure, cheap labour from overseas, or whatever it may be. So that's the third factor, not only spirituality in a place of pilgrimage, and the place of sanctity. People at their wits' end have always come to Glastonbury, of course, knowing that it's a place of healing. That goes back to centuries. So this Glastonbury Festival. Also, I just wanted to draw to your attention this charity that I came across a few weeks ago, and it was called SARI, S-A-R-I, and it's a charity based in Bristol, and it's a stand against racism and inequality. I'm happy to pass on the details of this. If perhaps something that the police could come across any victims, they could pass on this information.
One of our biggest stakeholders, we refer to them daily.
You do.
But thank you.
Well,
they're very valuable service to all sorts of different people with difficulties. Absolutely.
I'm very pleased about. And I'm also very pleased about your intent to create a working group that can include the travelling community and all aspects of the community, the bricks and mortar community, and everybody, because that's a very good thing to do. Final thing, I was asked to ask this question from the meeting that has been referred to, where Mark Shelford was there and the Chief Constable was there. The Deputy Mayor and myself were also there. It was, if you could just pass this on, perhaps a written response. That is with regard to social media hate, detail what we're doing with regard to that, because that is rife also in Glastonbury and doesn't help towards bringing the community together. In fact, it has the opposite effect, it polarises the community, and this is a big part of the problem, which I think needs to be addressed.
Let me make a note of that question before I leave, and I'll make sure we follow that up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'd now like to ask non-town councillors if they wish to ask questions of the inspector. So I did see a few hands go up just a moment ago. Thank you. So if we start with Colette and then the gentleman sat next to her. So yes, if you'd like to come here.
I just wanted to correct what the officer said earlier about there being like 3 meals a day provided. It's not true, because I'm someone that lives here and has needed to eat at times. It's good that we feed each other. It's the best thing the whole planet can do. Yeah, all right, drugs, no, but food, it's good. I think we should support feeding each other and encourage that. It's good. And to also bear in mind that some of us, like myself, at the moment I'm claiming money from the government, and it's not enough. I'm not an addict anymore. I don't waste my money. I try very hard to make it last a month, and it doesn't. Yeah, so, you know, a bit of compassion for the people that do genuinely need food. The fridge serves a purpose, the Krishnas serve a purpose, the church is brilliant. You know, please, can we just encourage feeding each other? It's good. And some of us do genuinely need it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was absolutely clear that was necessary.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So my background is that
would you be happy to say your name?
I'm Camille King. My background is that 4 years ago there was some problems with benches that impacted me, and it basically ended in somebody else from them punching me in the face. So that's my.
Is there any way to get nearer the mic?
Well, oh, there's the mic. Sorry. Yeah.
No, you've just turned it off, Councillor. Thank you. Yes, you're all right now.
Do you want me to repeat?
You're good. You're good.
No, you turned it off again, Lindsay.
Press that big button again.
All right.
And don't touch it.
Yeah.
There we go.
So
Okay, do you want me to repeat what I just said?
Yes, please. And if you could hold the mic up, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. So 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago, there were some problems with the benches basically, and that resulted in me being punched in the face. Cut a long story short. The question I have to the inspector is, so for the alcohol PSPO to be enforced, do they have to be do the troublemakers, do they have to be kicking off for you to enforce it? So they just have to be drinking for you to enforce it, and that's what you do.
So the SPO is a piece of legislation brought in by Mendip District Council. Mendip District Council have the ability to enforce it, and it does relate to the consumption of alcohol in public spaces or other intoxicating substances in public places. Yeah.
So the grounds that you use it will be, you just see somebody drinking?
So we would use it where we thought that it may lead to outbreaks of antisocial behaviour or criminality. Okay. We still have discretion within that framework. So most of the time, enforcing it means...
there's background to this, because I did phone up the PSPO and he said he wouldn't come out because they weren't kicking off. but I just wanted them to enforce the street drinking thing like preemptively before anything happened. So you're saying that they do?
Yeah, my team are
preemptively before, like.
Yeah, we can enforce it preemptively if we think that the.
Or you always do?
No, not always, and I don't think we could ever claim always to do everything because we have finite resources.
Yeah, sure.
So when we come across the issue, or if something's reported to us and we are able to, in the grand scheme of everything else that we have on at that particular moment in time, if we can, we will, of course.
And of course, you have patrols with the police community support officer. So if they're walking down the high street and they see a street drinker, they will take action immediately.
Again, that would be a decision on any particular circumstance, depending on what's in front of them. That action may be advice and ask them to dispose of the alcohol.
Right. But you're saying there are circumstances where they would walk past and just do nothing.
My expectation would be, if they saw someone drinking alcohol in breach of the PSPO, that they would, at levels of discretion, advise, ask them to dispose of it, and if that's refused, to report them for breaching the PSPO.
Yeah. So in most cases, they would do something.
I would hope so. Yeah, engagements at the very least. Yeah.
Thank you. That's quite reassuring. Thank you very much. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Is anybody else? Thank you. If you'd like to come forward.
Hello again. I thought your presentation for the most part was fantastic. For the most part. Thank you for it. How to word this? I've been mulling it over in my head without finding difficulties with this topic. I believe one of the main contributing factors to the problems of Glastonbury and the antisocial behaviour and what draws in negative energy, for want of a different term, is something far more underlying and far more complex. I have to say I've been here for 15 and a half months. I've listened a lot. I listen all the time. Now, there are certain factors, certain groups of individuals, I don't know how common knowledge this is. There are certain groups of individuals who talk quite candidly to me and quite frankly to me about a problem far more antisocial than the drinking and the drugs. It's one of child trafficking and paedophilia. This is very prevalent in this town, or has been very prevalent in this town. It's all been deemed as a hub for child trafficking and paedophilia. This is what causes monumental problems across the entire everything. And it's something I believe far, far, far more importantly that needs to be addressed. Yes, these issues that we're talking of, they are very serious and they need to be stamped out in a sympathetic and empathetic and way that, as you say, we can all work together with this. But the root cause of so many things is the energy that's created with this very, very serious issue, which is child trafficking and paedophilia. Now, this might not be, as I say, common knowledge to everyone, and I appreciate that. But there are many, 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 many things that we have to consider as a part of the whole. And this is very, very, very serious. Yes.
You or anyone else who has information about child trafficking should absolutely share that with the police, and we would give considerable resources to investigating those problems, far more probably than the antisocial behaviour in Glastonbury High Street. I can guarantee you that. Thanks.
I do fully believe that this is the root cause of all the issues that is prevalent across the planet. It's far more far-reaching than what we could ever imagine. It's abhorrent. It's absolutely, there's no excuse for this sort of behaviour. But this is what creates the energy surrounding the negative vibration, without going deep and spiritual and profound or whatever, is absolutely catastrophic and affects the whole infinitely so. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I would ask councillors just to reflect a moment on the information we've just heard, which is of very serious nature, before responding. I notice, Councillor Henderson, you raised your hand. Do you wish to respond?
Well, police have stepped in, but I think, that is certainly news to me. I don't know how many of these councillors are shocked as I was to hear those words, but I would just say, Mr. Gage, if you have any information, you need to talk to these people pronto.
Yeah. Colette, but please be mindful that normally we only allow people to speak once to an item, but if you wish to, yeah.
Just to add, actually, I'd also like to bring into awareness the fact that this town also has quite, there's a drug rape going on here. There has been reports to the police, and some of the characters that do this, the police are aware of them, but just to make the community aware that this is also an incredibly large problem, not just here, but all around the country. And it would be really good to hear that the police are cracking down on the drugs, because there are rape drugs that are being used here and all over the planet, but we're here now. So and it ties in with what the last gentleman said, to just bring that into awareness. It is a very big problem. It's just that the girls that it happened to are normally so traumatized after that they don't know how to talk about it, and they get confused and they leave. Yeah. But I'm a survivor, and I've been through this in this town. And I'm very aware of the amount of drugs that are going on around here, because, like I said, I'm an ex-addict. And so, yeah, just to bring that into awareness, it's also a very big problem. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've heard the trouble that we had in 2016, 15, 16. Many of you will remember the stabbings that happened on the high street related to drug crime. And I was mayor at the time, and I did, with the help of my deputy, pull together what we termed at the time a one team. Similar to what I think you're proposing, to bring all the agencies together to discuss this. It was at that point that I really, although I'd heard this phrase used at those meetings that we held, I understood the meaning of county lines for the first time. And I learned the connection between county lines and coercion, county lines and the trafficking of people, county lines and the abuse of young people. And at that time I raised it in this council chamber, this very chamber, that this is really an issue for the good people of Glastonbury to consider, because nobody sells drugs where no one's buying drugs. And it's not very hip or cool as a member of the alternative community, which I hope I am, to say, wow, we need to think about this, because the alternative community, and indeed many people I know in the non-alternative community, take drugs regularly. There may even have been people sat around this table who take drugs regularly. And what you're doing, even if you're buying from people you know and it's all homegrown, what you're doing is reinforcing a culture that leads to horrific crime. So please, Glastonbury's community, please do think about that. If you're watching the video or commenting on this on social media later, as I'm sure many people will be, it is down to our community to take some responsibility for all of these things that are happening. Thank you. Would anybody else wish to speak? Former Councillor Lunn.
I'll use this. Inspector, that was very encouraging. Thank you for that. I was somewhat reassured that we've got some plans going forward. Somewhat because I'm still talking to traders, or traders are still talking to me. I might preface this by saying that when I was a councillor up till May, Councillor Henderson and I were nominated to be the police liaison members of the council. And we had a meeting with officers every month, usually prior to the town council meeting, so that we could understand a bit more in depth, talk about the issues, but also we were both talking to traders and passing that information up and down. And I gather the police were talking with our clerk, and certainly the issue that you refer to was brought up then, and that was back last year. So that's been talked about a lot over that time, I'm sure. The one thing that I'm sure if there were a lot more traders here, they would want to know. So I'd like to ask you the question. It did seem, at least up until the summer, that the police were not seen both at night and at weekends. Now, we do know the shift pattern meant that one weekend out of 4, there probably wasn't either any police or as many police. Now, I'd just like you to, for their sake, the traders, reassure them that things are changing, because I think that is the one factor. If you haven't got the sight of police around, or certainly at weekends, I know the traders say to me, the antisocial behaviour, people, those that commit the antisocial behaviour, seem to know when you're not around. So that would be useful. Can I just also put a question to the town council? And that is, you're the councillors, you represent the residents. So you need to speak to the residents and find out what they say and then report that back. It's not always the case where residents need to come and tell you what's going on. So I'd like you to get back into your wards and talk a lot more to residents, rather more often than you do at election time. And just one word that I'd like to add with reciprocity, something Councillor Cousins, the Mayor, often used to talk about. When we receive something from the community, we like to give something back. And that's what I've been doing and what a lot of you are doing. And maybe we should talk about that with a lot more members of the community. To say, if you've received something of value from this community, what can you give back to help the community or help people similar in your situation?
Thank you, former Councillor Lunn. Is there anybody else who wishes? Claire. So, Claire Mayspare. Claire, do you have a microphone? Yeah, thank you.
This one, Claire, if you want.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council, ladies, gentlemen, and folk. I'm actually a bit nervous about speaking up tonight because I'm going to be quite challenging. My name's Claire. Hi. I'm a Maysparer. I'm one of the town's Maysparers. So I'm a civic dignitary, and my function is to represent the Crown at civic events, to defend the dignity of the Mayor and the Council, although sometimes I don't behave very well. but always with integrity, I hope. Right, okay. The first thing I would like to be taken into account by the police with their nice new plans, with their allocation of resources, is that, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I do speak for quite a few people, as quite a few of you know. I operate in different parts of the town. A lot of people I've spoken to on the street, and also one councillor who shall remain nameless. We've given up calling 101 because it takes us 40 minutes to get through. Now, trying to push somebody who's maybe a bit distressed in the direction of a website is actually counterproductive in your answer phone messages. The 101, if it were working, would be marvellous. I'd like to see more resources for 101. The second thing is that a few years ago, the whole council, I seem to remember, headed by Alderman Tucker, requested the reinstatement of a CPSO team, Glastonbury Beat team phone, so that we could phone at any time. This had been working very well for us, but I understand not so well for the police. But I would ask our new inspector to consider the reinstatement of a dedicated neighbourhood team phone. The next thing I want to speak about isn't quite so easy. I tell people we have the best, our police in this town, I tell them that they're the best in the world. I love the Beat team, and most of them think I'm all right as well. Mr. Reid, you weren't entirely accurate with your presentation, and I'd like to say to you now that maybe you could take a leaf out of your wonderful Beat Team's book and listen to them and their experience. Maybe develop a bit more humility, maybe go for some more training, because you were not invited by the vicar to St. Benedict's Church. I caught you going in during our soup lunch. We are there with vulnerable people. You told me the vicar had invited you. He had not. And we found this kind of policing insensitive, and we found it discourteous in the church. Now, your Beat team would not have behaved like this. They would not have stood at the front of the church, in the middle of the church, surveying our community in the manner in which you did. They would have had sensitivity, and I think it would be helpful for you to establish right relation with the good folk of this town, because not everybody is that comfortable about your appointment. And having said that, I think the police are wonderful, and I think our Beat team are really cool. The third thing I would like to ask everybody, maybe the police can help me here, is that I understand there are to be another wave of evictions in Bristol. And my fear, if this is the case, is that there's going to be more people turning up and this is going to make life difficult for our non-bricks and mortar community as much as our bricks and mortar community. So I think any information there would be gratefully received. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Claire. So, yes, of course.
Thank you. The first point around the 101, it's a recognised problem. I'll take that away. The team's mobile phone numbers are published and left with the community. And when they're on duty, those phones are on. The difficulty is when they're not on duty and something serious is reported via that phone. That's why we direct towards central reporting to make sure whoever is on duty responds. In relation to the second point, I remember our meeting at St Benedict's Church, and I was directed by the vicar to come down and say hello.
Sir, I am a member of the PCC. I am deeply embedded in this community. I may make mistakes, but people know me as an honest person who will speak out if things are wrong. You were not, for the record, you can say that you were invited by the vicar. The vicar and I had a conversation subsequent to your turning up. And let's say he remembers the conversation differently. Leave it at that.
The incident where we were invited to take lunch was on an occasion you weren't present and that we were invited in. And actually, it was really engaging because we managed to speak to members of the community, as I said before, that are more difficult for us to reach. I spoke to one gentleman who lives on one of the sites and was really worried about the new PSPO. Had a really decent conversation around it. We were there to engage, and I'm sorry if that's not how you perceive that.
As a member of St Benedict's Church PCC and as a member of the soup lunch team, we do not welcome outside agencies into the soup lunch without prior arrangement. We are very, very strict on this. And for all of your information, inside a churchyard, the church warden has greater legal powers and more legal powers of arrest than do the police. And it would be really nice if this could be respected. If people, the police, the BT, they know us. When we need to call on them, when we have a problem, they are there and they are brilliant. But they come at our behest. They don't push into our community. There's a very delicate balance. And I think maybe we need to just explore that more sensitivity.
Thank you for your views. Some of your colleagues may have a different opinion, but I thank you for your views.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, no, I've got it. Gosh, that's been quite a couple of hours. Thank you for your reports and statistics. I really hope we don't get those statue people, though. That's the only thing I think I'll go against. We've heard some really, really distressing things. This was never going to be an easy meeting. And I think all sides have had a bashing in this last couple of hours. There's only a couple of things I'd like to bring up and then go on to the working group, which I think, yes, we need to go forward. One is when we say residents, I think we should include the non-bricks and mortar when we say residents, speaking to residents. They are residents too. Two, thank you so much for making the distinguish between the non-bricks and mortar, the caravan dwellers, and people here known as benchers. I think what happens with us, and it's awful, I hate the way we work sometimes, against each other. When we throw everyone in the same pot, and I think that's all we're trying to do is discern the different groups of people. I don't think there's anyone around this table will disagree that you know, there is a problem. There is a problem there. It is getting worse. I was very fortunate 30 years ago to be taken in by a travelling community. There was nowhere else. I was on a drove. It was a very peaceful community. It was so noticeable one year, and everyone said there was a surge of drugs from Bristol, and it was like a down, and it was bad stuff. It was hard stuff, and people are vulnerable here. People are easy pickings, and they're easy pickings because they're not protected. They're not protected by us. They've made their own society because they have been thrown out by society, so they go to a society that they feel they belong to, which is the traveller community. So can we please stop throwing everyone in with the same pot? And as Colette said earlier, you know, there are people here who are incredibly brave, who have gone through so much, and I know that the traveller community here is one of the most supportive I have ever met. On that, support services, I am really hoping with this Town New Deal that we get some more support services here. This is part of what's also happening. I believe actually in the building behind, there's going to be a health and wellbeing centre. So this is there for our residents that need it, that should actually bring in the support service that are needed. And I really think we just need to draw a line and pull together. I want to be on this working group. I want to see church wardens on this working group, whether they have powers or not, whichever powers they like. And residents, I'd like to see, I think we just need about 20 Dave Beaches, really. You know, he would be very proud of this. So yes, I would be very much up for being in the working group, and if we can all just work together on this, it would be great. Thank you.
So I'm mindful that we have been discussing this for a little time now. I note, Inspector, that you had a proposal that you wish to put forward. Would you be happy to let us have it right now, the words of your proposal, so that the clerk could note them?
By all means, Your Worship, thank you. The formation of a multifaceted working group representative of all the communities within Glastonbury to decide what we want as a town and how we move forward together.
Thank you. I would like to formally propose what he said.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Your Worship.
Thank you. I shall leave it to the clerk and the inspector to discuss the formal arrangement of such a group which can convene within this chamber, and also of working out the maybe various ways of inviting members of the community and wider groups and organisations within Glastonbury to be party to that meeting. But I think that that is a good resolution, and I thank the inspector for the wisdom of it. Mm-hmm. Councillors, I am minded that we have resolved at the end of a discussion, and that we will probably, unless anybody has something burning to say, and I'm looking to councillors, county councillors, district councillors, and the community. So there are. So I see a lady in front of me, and then someone at the back had their hand up too. Yeah. So the lady in the barber jacket first, please. Would you be happy to tell us your name?
My name's Kate.
Kate.
I'm just curious to know how all of these teams and working groups are going to be set up, given the fact that a good portion of the site community down in Glastonbury have been issued with eviction notices again this week. So if you get rid of everybody that's already here, I don't quite know who's going to turn up to formulate your groups. And I don't see how that's going to change the situation from Bristol either. Maybe it's just going to clear space for them to come. Who knows? But there you go.
Thank you. It is a very good point. And I must say that the merit of issuing these notices at this time, I feel, is questionable when we as a whole community are just beginning to wish to address this in some form of harmony and unity. And so it is unfortunate. And I was personally, and I'm not speaking as a councillor now, but just personally very sorry to see those letters going out. The lady over here.
My name's Lisa, and I was thinking about, you spoke about the people on the benches, but actually what I'd like to talk about is the fact that the frequencies in this town from like I know that we had a moratorium and I know that we suspended supposedly 5G, but actually I know people personally that have taken measurements in this town, and they found that down Benedict Street especially, the levels are so high. They've gone to other towns and they found that it's lower in other towns than here. And considering that this town actually, we agreed that we didn't want 5G. I know that there's been an application recently that wasn't even like made publicly aware to put 5G in place. A lot of people are suffering already from 4G. I'm one of them, and I know that I'm not the only one. In fact, where I live as well, I live next to a substation, and I know that my next door neighbour died of cancer, and I know that a lot of people have sleep problems where I live. I know that another one of my neighbours has got cancer since she's been living there, and hears frequencies all night and can't sleep. These frequencies seem to have gone up during lockdown, and I'm suffering because of it. And I know that people on the benches that have got drinking problems, you can see that. That's very obvious, but you can't see these frequencies. And a lot of people are sick. They don't even know why they're sick. And they're going to pharmaceuticals, and they're going to alternative therapies, and they're spending lots of money. They're frustrated. They don't know what's causing these problems. And the EMF frequencies is something that's accumulative. So it builds up over time. It might not affect you immediately. You might not know it's affecting you, but one of the things it does is it can affect the bladder. So I've spoken to a lot of people around town that have told me that they have had extreme bladder conditions. And some of them have said that they haven't had bladder conditions in 10 years. And I'm one of them. And in fact, when I spoke to people around town, I found that half the people I spoke to said they had severe bladder infections. And I know that the frequencies themselves can be a cause of that. It might not necessarily be the sole cause, but that would be part of it. But, there's a book by Arthur Firstenberg, and he talks about frequencies being correlated with disease and viruses throughout history. And so there's a direct correlation, and it's not really being addressed, and it's a problem not just in this town but worldwide. But I would say for some reason it seems to be particularly in this town at the moment with the people that I know that have these devices, testing methods. I've measured in my living room. It's totally unreasonable. I've had to spend hundreds of pounds, putting up shielding that I can't afford to live that way. I've had to do tremendous amounts because I've suffered, and I know I'm not the only one. So that's all I want to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that point. If you have a short thing to say, please. An observation is fine. Thank you.
I'd just like to reinforce Indra's point that she made. No, mine wasn't quite. It's just I've spent some time with the travellers in Glastonbury as well. I just say thank you for saying what you just said, because that's it basically.
Thank you. So I wondered whether there was a gentleman back there who had their hand up we haven't heard from. I'm not sure. No, okay. Well, thank you very, very much for coming to this meeting of the council. It's certainly given us an awful lot to think about, but I am hopeful that we will be able to convene a working group with the police, other agencies and members of the community, the whole community, to have a look at this very important issue. The last item on our agenda is to note the date of the next meeting. Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You make sure that schools are involved, because I think it's very important, especially given that young people are being targeted. I actually disagree with you about lines. They don't bother with this place, it's already separate. There's no market. It's here already. But our young people are very, very.
So, Councillor, my point in raising the county lines issue, which was certainly an issue in 2016, I am unsure, I'm uncertain what the situation is currently. I'm sure the police are aware, but I was raising it to link the connection between drug use and the other activities such as trafficking, coercion that happen. And I think that is an important thing for our community to reflect upon. But councillors, then, well, good point, councillor, about the schools. I think that's very noteworthy. So, councillors, I'm going to move to item 4, the date of the next meeting, which is Tuesday, the 13th of December,